Hey, it's Andy with Rocket City Pinball. Today I have for you some replacement character brackets, some additional characters, and some miscellaneous hardware cleanup for Jersey Jack's Sonic the Hedgehog Pinball. I was a OG Sonic kid. These games came out in my young teenage years, so I played a lot of Sonic 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and love those games dearly. And in fact, I even raised my own kids playing those classics. So when we heard this game was coming out, we got really excited as a family, and especially with the early rumors that implied that it was going to be based on those early games. What we got turned out to be based more on the Sonic Generations era, but you know what? That's okay. It's a great game. We're having a lot of fun, and we still love the characters. But you could imagine we were a little bit upset that you get representation, of course, by Sonic, when you got Amy over here, but no Tails, no Knuckles. So we had to make sure that those got in the game too, since we were fans of those characters. So here I have a couple of representations of Tails and Knuckles. We also got a Shadow. Even though he wasn't from the original games, he's still pretty cool, and he's featured prominently in the art. So we thought it'd be neat if we could include him too. So if you're familiar with a lot of the parts and things that I make for games, you know that I like the details. And so something that jumped out at me right away when I started looking at getting these new characters in was the fact that Sonic has this black bracket that holds him in, and it kind of doesn't really match the area around him. Kind of jumps out, kind of ugly. And Amy has a similar bracket. Hers is also black, but it's not quite as visible because when you're from the player's perspective, you're back here, you don't see it quite as much, but still I thought that could be replaced. So I started working on updated brackets for that, and you'll see that I made mine out of a translucent green. So once you get them in place, you see they blend in a lot better with the existing artwork there. So when this is behind Sonic, I'll do the installation here in the video, but you'll see that it'll make that black bracket disappear and look much more in tune with the artwork of the game. So what I'm going to do in this video is, so I have replacement brackets for Sonic, as well as some hardware cleanup for some stuff nearby. So I'll show you when I do the installation where those go. This is what a custom bracket that I designed looks like for Knuckles. I'll include him already all mounted up for you, and you just have to go put it in the game. So I'll walk you through that. He comes with a green screw as well. Shadow's pretty easy, just takes one screw, so we'll do that one. We'll do Amy, and we'll do Tails. So we'll start with Sonic, and depending on which ones you happen to acquire, you can jump ahead to the different sections of the video to see how to install them. So let's start with Sonic. In Sonic's area here, first of all, you've got that hex spacer back there. Jersey Jack put that in there as a preventative measure for ball trap. That's also why this bracket has a little bit of an angle to it. So if a ball comes down, hits the spacer, glides along this angle bracket and down back into the playfield. But again, this big silver thing's kind of ugly. So I have just a little cap that's printed in translucent clear. So you just drop that right over the top, and it looks a lot nicer because that picks up some of the light and is not quite as jumping out at you. So that's where that goes. Now I'm also going to include with the Sonic stuff a green hex sleeve and a green screw, and those are going to take care of this post right here. So you see you've got this silver post, the silver screw kind of clashes with what we got there, so I'm going to replace those and cover that up. But before we do that, that post has to come off in order to replace the Sonic bracket. So let's wait to do that until we take all that stuff off. So let's talk about how we take Sonic off to put the new bracket on. To do that, first of all, these colors. Hang on. Okay, there we go. First of all, like I just mentioned, you're going to have to undo this screw right here and just kind of push the spotlight off to the side. This hex spacer will have to be unthreaded as well to remove the plastic, because Sonic has screws going through the plastic, through the bracket and into his feet. So we're going to have to take this whole plastic has to come off. When you go to remove your spotlight, you don't see it on mine because I've already taken it off, but there's typically a little black zip tie that holds the wires tightly against that hex spacer. So just be sure to trim that off. It's not really needed, it just makes sure that the wires stay out of the way, but just be very careful when you cut that off. Be sure to cut it off on the side away from where the wires are, so because you don't want to cut those wires by accident. So we're going to take this screw off, push the spotlight out of the way, cut the zip tie off, unthread this hex spacer. You're also going to remove this screw in front of his left foot, and you're also going to remove this screw back here. Okay, so here's what we took off so far. These were at the spotlight, and these were the other two screws I pointed out. Now, before you remove the plastic, you got to be really careful, because on the top of this post, and also on the top of this post, between the post and the plastic, there's a black washer that sits between them to help protect the artwork there. So before you go try to lift this whole plastic off of here, you need to be prepared to try to grab those little washers and hang on to them. They may be stuck to the artwork, but in my case they were not. They were a little bit loose. So when you pull those out, try to catch those washers or grab them with a tool or a magnet. In fact, magnet would be a great idea, I'll bet you. There's my magnet here. I might be able to just grab them. Oh, look at that. There it goes. So, good little tip there. Try to grab those with the magnet tool, if you got one. Alright, so yep, got both the washers there. Okay, so now that I have those washers out, you should be able to lift this whole plastic and remove it. Note that it's kind of underneath this this little guy back here, so you have to kind of lift it and pull it forward to get it out from underneath there. There you go. See the spotlight's hanging loose. Alright, so here is the whole plastic with Sonic on it. So to get him off, as you can see, there are two small screws that go through the plastic and into his feet, and there's also a screw going in the back between his quills there. So we're going to remove those three screws. We're going to hang on to them because we're going to use those to mount him to my new bracket. Alright, so now you see they're totally separated. The two screws, once you remove the two screws from the bottom, he stays attached to the bracket, but then the whole bracket comes off, and then the one screw in the back of his quills there attaches them near the top of the bracket there. So as you can see, my bracket is roughly modeled after that one. I wanted to have the same footprint, but since they made this out of metal and they have all these special cuts and bends in there, I didn't need that since mine was going to be 3D printed. But it still has the same angle on the back to help prevent ball trap. So now we'll just go and attach this to Sonic the same way the other one was attached. We've got one screw that goes through the back into his quills, and then the other two through the bottom of the plastic, through the mount, and into his feet. Okay, now Sonic is attached to the plastic with my bracket, and you can kind of already see how much nicer that looks with the green, kind of blending better in with the green than the black. Okay, so now you're going to have to bring this back into the game and reinstall it. Again, you'll have a countersunk screw up at this location here, and you'll have the other screw at this location here, and then the hex post, the hex spacer at this location here. But remember, the two washers. So you're going to have to very carefully balance those washers on top of these two posts here before you set the plastic back in place. So do that very carefully and get the plastic back in and reinstall those screws and the hex post. Alright, so quick installation tip there. Instead of trying to balance the washers, like I had just said, I found it helpful. You could just set the plastic in place and set it where it's supposed to go, and then it's actually fairly easy to slide the washers in before you put the screws in, because there's already a little bit of weight of the plastic and the model sitting on top of that, so that helps keep the washers in place. Alright, now before you reinstall the spotlight, I'm sure you noticed that there's a little notch cut out in the plastic right there, and that's where the wires for the spotlight are supposed to go. But before you reinstall the screw that holds the spotlight in place, don't forget about my hex sleeve. And you're going to slide this guy right on here. So now that blends in a little bit better. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have a seizure with these, with these lights. There we go. Okay, so there you go. So you got a green, silver, kind of garish, lighter translucent green, blends in a little better. And then we're going to put the spotlight back on, and we're going to use this green screw up on top just to cover up some more of the silver there. So let me take care of that because I can't do it with one hand. And there we go. So that makes a lot of sense to me because you've got, now you have green covering the hex post and a little green on top, so it kind of fills in for the long stems of those tall flowers that are on the back of the spotlight. It's a nice touch by Jersey Jack to put some artwork on those things. So now you can see, again, as a whole, the green blends in a lot better, and so Sonic doesn't have that big ugly black bracket behind him anymore. So I think that looks pretty nice. I'm alright with the black screw by his foot and the other black screws in the back there. You know, there's darkness and other things in the artwork, so the black doesn't really bother me in those locations, but it did on this big silver piece here. So alright, so there you go, that's Sonic. So let's move on and do, let's go to Sonic 2, so where we get introduced to Tails. So we'll bring Tails in. So Tails has a very simple bracket that I've already attached, that I've designed. You see it's got these nice flat screws on the bottom, so it's all flush, so it can sit on top of this plastic over here. So how this is going to work is Tails is going to hang out right over here. So we are going to undo the same spotlight setup over here on this side, and we're going to remove that hex spacer and use it to anchor this bracket at that open hole that you're seeing in the camera right there. So your steps are: remove this screw, cut off the zip tie that I already did so it's not here visible, and unthread this hex spacer. Alright, so I got those off. So Tails is going to come in here like this, and you're just going to line up those holes. My bracket has a little recess to allow for the hex spacer to thread down in there and pinch the whole assembly down. You're going to want to make it nice and snug because it's only connected at one end. I didn't really want to cover up this flower here. I could have extended the mount to come all the way to this screw, but I didn't want to cover this up. So just make sure when you tighten the hex spacer down, you make it nice and snug up here to keep the bracket in the correct position. Alright, as you can see, I got the hex spacer installed nice and snug. So the next step is you're going to bring the spotlight back in and install the green screw that I provided with this kit. So yeah, there were a lot of different figures out there. I tried several different ones and to see which ones I liked the best, and I like this one the best. He was, you know, nicest looking, and he was proper size to go along with Sonic over here because he's, you know, Tails, as we know, is a little bit smaller than Sonic, so it was the right height difference. So anyway, alright, so let's go install that screw and then we're done with Tails. Wait, I got a little ahead of myself. I forgot I also provide this green sleeve for this hex spacer over here. So put this hex spacer on, hex sleeve, sorry, put that on first, and then reinstall it with the green screw. Alright, there we go. Now Tails is done. So you don't have to re-zip tie the spotlight wires if you don't want to. I guess I'll include 2 small zip ties with the kit, so you can do that if you want. But, you know, again, they stay pretty well in position. Same over here. So it's up to you. I'll include them with the kit, and you can put them back on to your pleasure. So, all right. So here's what we got so far. So we got Sonic, and now we have representation from Tails. Much happier. So next we're going to do Knuckles. Now, if you've played this game at all yet, or if you've seen some of the demos, you know that this area here, this bash dash target, is related to a Knuckles animation that you get on the screen. So this is the perfect spot for Knuckles to be, because that is related to him. So we're going to bring Knuckles in, again, custom bracket. You'll notice the way I've designed this bracket has a little pointy end coming off the side here. That's similar to this one here, and again, the purpose for that is to prevent a ball trap. So if a ball flew up in the air and landed on that channel with the lights there, it would roll down and it would contact that little piece of the bracket and roll across the front and down back into this lane here. So this is really easy to install. All you've got is that one black screw right there. We're going to remove that, and we're going to install a green countersunk head screw that's going to sit in this nice little recess in my bracket right here. So remove that screw, set Knuckles in place. As far as the proper angle to put him at, you probably want to, you just want to have the angle of the piece on the side about the same as this one down here. Okay, and simple as that, Knuckles is in as well. So again, now you've got a flush head screw there. So once again, if the ball comes back here, it's going to clip this piece and then just roll across the surface and then back down into the lane. So really easy to install him. And again, with the green plastic behind him, you don't have a big ugly black bracket. You've just got a nice green one, so it blends in better. All right, so now we have Sonic, Tails, Knuckles. Amy's already in, so let's do Amy's bracket next. Again, not too difficult, so we'll do that bracket, and then we'll do Shadow last. Okay, so for Amy's plastic, you have a screw here to remove, a screw here to remove, and this screw right here at the base of the loop. So let's remove those 3 screws, and then I'll show you how to get the plastic out of here. Okay, now before you remove the plastic, you see I've pulled those 2 screws out, and I've pulled that screw out back there. But before you remove the plastic, again, just like on the Sonic side, you've got a little black washer underneath the plastic there. So if you've got a magnet tool, you may want to see if that is loose enough to pull out. There we go, got it. Alright, and then before you grab this whole plastic and pull it out, it's pretty tight up in here, and you can see you've got this plastic sandwiched between some metal parts, and you don't want to damage your artwork on your plastic. So all you have to do is bring a finger or a thumb up here, and you just push, oh, it's kind of bright, there we go. You just push the ramp a little bit towards the outside wall, and you'll see that kind of lifts it up a little bit. So again, I can't do this with 2 hands, but essentially you're going to grab the plastic, you can grab it by Amy, and you're going to push on this loop ramp just to lift it a little bit out of the way, and then you can safely pull the plastic out. So let's do that. Okay, you can see Amy's setup is a little bit different than Sonic's. So she's got 1 screw in a foot, and then this other black screw actually goes into a threaded insert or nut that's part of the bracket assembly. That's part of the bracket that does not come off, it's not separate. And then she also has a screw going into the hammer. So what we're going to do to take Amy off is we're going to take the big screw, the big black screw, and that will release the bracket. And then we also have to take out the screw that's in her foot. So take these 2 screws out, and then the whole bracket and Amy together will come off, and then we'll be able to access the screw in the hammer. Okay, as you can see, now I've got the bracket detached from the plastic, and it's also loose from her foot. So now we're going to take the screw out of the hammer. Now my replacement bracket is pretty similar in shape. There's a couple minor differences, but it's relatively similar. But as you notice, I don't have a nut welded to mine, so I'm going to provide a green nut that's going to go in the place where that one on the bracket was. So you're going to reinstall her to the plastic the same way. You're going to pass a small screw through this top piece into the hammer, and then you're going to put this whole bracket back on the plastic. You're going to hold the nut in place, thread the black nut from the bottom through the bracket, through the plastic, and into the nut, and then also this small screw through all that into her foot. Okay, see, so I have the bracket attached to her hammer, and next we'll bring in the plastic, put it over these, and install the other screw in her foot and the nut. Alright, there we go. So the way I found easiest to do that was to brace that nut from the top with a 5/16 wrench, and that gives you some resistance to screw in the thread, to thread in the screw, to tighten the screw from the bottom. Okay, so Amy's all mounted up, so we're going to go put her back in. So once again, you've got the screw that's going to go up there, the screw that's going to go right here, and then this location also has the black washer. So set the plastic in place, then slide the washer in and reinstall those 3 screws. Alright, Amy's in. So we got those 3 screws in plus the washer, and so now you see green bracket, not quite as unsightly as the black one. Again, you don't really see it all that much, but certain angles you can, and the fact that it's translucent will help allow more of the light to show through. Alright, so last but not least is Shadow. Shadow's really easy. I kind of had some fun with him trying to figure out where to put him. I'm going to put him right up here. So I'm going to pull this black screw out. This, by the way, if you haven't removed your upper playfield yet, this is one of the hex spacers you have to remove the upper playfield. So if you have to do upper playfield removal for maintenance or cleaning later, you will have to pull Shadow out, but he's just held up with one screw. So we're going to pull that black screw out. We're going to replace it with this screw with a white head on it, and that's going to go right through Shadow's hand. Sorry. It's going to go right through Shadow's hand there, so it blends in a little bit better, and we're going to mount him right there. He's going to look like he's climbing up into the laboratory. So pull this screw out, install Shadow with the white screw, and if you want, you can even loosen this little screw, and you can put his fingers kind of pinching underneath this plastic here like he's grabbing on. So I'm going to go do that right now. Alright, and there you go. So I've got Shadow in there, attached him with the upper screw, and then I lifted this plastic by loosening these 2 screws here and kind of pinched his fingers in there just to give him a little bit more to hold on to. But I mean, he's secure with the top one, but in any case. So there you have it. So you got all the figures nicely represented. You got nice green brackets that are translucent, so they allow light through, and they're not quite as unsightly as the black ones. So there are a lot of different models out there. So these were the ones that I chose and designed my brackets with, just because I think they were the best sizes. You know, Tails is a little bit smaller than Sonic, Knuckles is a little bit bigger than Sonic, so I thought that was the best fit. So reach out if you have any questions, RocketCityPinball.com.